River of 100 ghosts, sublime in your arrogance, strong with the might of the wilderness, even yet must you be haunted by wraiths that bend and sway to the rhythm of the paddles, and strain under phantom loads, who still tread their soundless ways through the shadowy naves of the pine forests, and in swift ghost canoes sweep down the swirling white water in a mad chasse galerie, with whoops and yells that are heard by no human ear. Almost can I glimpse these flitting shades, and on the portages can almost hear, faintly, the lisping rustle of forgotten footsteps, coming back to me like whispers from a dream that is no longer remembered, but cannot die. The words of Archibald Blaney, better known as Grey Owl, from Book 2, Mississauga, the second part of his seminal work, Tales from an Empty Cabin. Here he describes Algoma's mighty Mississagi River and the ghosts of the old brigades that once treaded in these lands. The land that contains the Mississagi east of Lake Superior and north of Lake Huron is ideal for canoe tripping. The old precipitous formations of volcanic rock that characterize this part of the Shield Country have been carved and molded by ice sheets, winds, and extreme weather over eons and in dramatic fashion. Massive cliffs and crags are common throughout the region, while mixed forests of pine, spruce, maple, birch, aspen, and others envelop a collection of 1,000 rivers, wetlands, and island-speckled lakes. The rivers and lakes of the Mississagi were well-traveled and used by Aboriginal populations for hunting and habitation as well. Indigenous encampments and other sites of importance are known to have existed at the mouth of the river and on Upper Green Lake, Ruel Lake, and Rocky Island Lake. The expansion of the fur trade brought voyageurs and European explorers to the region, and outposts were established as early as the late 1700s. The river itself offered an excellent opportunity for trappers and traders to access bountiful pelt-yielding lands of the interior. Northwest Company forts soon sprung up at the mouth of the river and on the north shore of Upper Green Lake. These were subsumed by the Hudson's Bay Company in the 1820s. Another outpost was established at Biscatacing with the expansion of the Canadian Pacific Railway in the 1880s and served as an important center of commerce in the area. By the late 1800s, logging operations began to expand to the Mississagi Basin with the exhaustion of more southerly forests. An immense network of logging trails, camps, dams, and chutes, including a 350-meter flume at Aubrey Falls, were established to support operations that fed enormous quantities of timber downstream en route to mills on the northern shores of Lake Huron. Timber extraction continues to varying degrees in the Mississagi region to this day, though well beyond the site of the canoe route. It is worth mentioning, too, that one of the most destructive forest fires in Canadian history tore through the Mississagi River Valley. In May 1948, separate fires in the Chapleau, Mississagi region merged together and scorched almost 750,000 acres of forest before being extinguished 3 months later. With the fire, large old-growth forests and local animal populations were devastated. Logging and industrial operations were shuttered, and the sky was shrouded in a haze that blocked the sun as far south as Washington, D.C. While the valley has rebounded, there is still evidence of this monstrous fire along many portions of the river, as seen in the formation of second-growth forests of birch and poplar. Also worth mentioning, in the summer of 1912, Tom Thomson, one of Canada's most beloved artists, ran the Mississagi from Biscotasing to Lake Huron over the course of 2 months. Famously and not far from the site of an old decommissioned fire tower on Upper Green Lake, Thomson narrowly escaped drowning as a storm swamped his canoe and forced him to swim to shore. After completing his trip, in a subsequent letter to a friend, Thomson remarked that the Mississagi was one of the finest canoe trips in the world. While we can only guess what precisely impelled Thomson to scribe these words, it is clear that the Mississagi still undoubtedly retains the magic that he must have felt as he sat on its rocky shores and sketched the wild panoramas that surrounded him that summer.
Yeah, they were hitting better with Devin in the front. That was funny. Yeah? Devin in the back, yeah, they were ready. Probably around 500.
Adding to the vibrant history of the Mississagi River is the former presence of Archie Blaney, or Grey Owl, in the area. In the early 1900s, Blaney, who was born in England, took up work as a trapper and forest ranger, living in both Temagami and Biscotasing for some time. While in Biscotasing, Blaney comprehensively traveled and trapped throughout the Mississagi wilderness. In the early 1900s, a cabin was built and served as the headquarters for the Mississagi Provincial Forest Reserve. It was in these days that Blaney stayed here while on duty as a forest ranger, and even carved his initials AB on the cabin's interior in 1914. Today, the cabin abuts a well-maintained private fishing lodge found at the end of a 100-meter portage trail that links Presage Bay back to the Mississagi River. During his time in the Canadian wilderness, Blaney's fascination with the Anishinaabe people and culture grew, and he adopted and embraced an Ojibwe persona. Under the moniker Grey Owl, Blaney produced a number of writings on matters of conservation in the Canadian wilderness, gained international recognition, and conducted speaking tours in several countries dressed in Ojibwe regalia, even taking audience with the British royal family. Blaney's true identity was not revealed to the public until after his death in 1938. Our full journey on the Upper Mississagi ultimately spanned 11 days, 10 nights, 143 kilometers of travel, and 19 portages. Altogether, we had dropped about 64 meters of elevation between Mississagi Lake and the top of Aubrey Falls. The duration of the trip, we met no other canoe groups. The remoteness of the route, coupled with the necessity for a lengthy vehicle shuttle, make the trip logistically tricky, though completely worth it. Although the river has been indelibly impacted by the hand of industry, logging and energy projects are clear examples. The upper stretch of the river to Aubrey Falls shows little evidence of this. For many, it may be disheartening to think of the influence that humans have had in altering this waterway, especially south of the falls, which was a section we didn't run. But this river is still one of the finest rivers I've had the joy of paddling. The Mississagi is a river that deserves to be traveled over 10 days or more. Its incredible and varied scenery, biodiversity, and unique history command sufficient time to explore and savor this wild place. This is, after all, the River of 100 Ghosts, a place of grand adventure, through which many have passed and where few tread. And yet signs still endure. The fire tower, the old cabin, the lodge made of driftwood, the centuries-old portage trails themselves. This river has seen generations of indigenous hunters and trappers. It has seen the great canoe brigades, the lumberjacks, a great artist, and a conservationist and writer who once scribed the following words. There comes the song of a white throat, high in the trees above me. I hear the roaring of the river, the endless noisy march past of the river, and the distant rumor of the rapids sounds like the conversation of the dead. The plaintive, unfinished melody of the little bird trailing off into utter silence, burdened with all the sadness, all the heartthrob, all the glory of the North, and infinitely beautiful sounds the requiem of the lost brigade, singing, singing, in a faraway cadence, farther and farther, fainter, fainter.